Good evening, friends, and welcome to Sleepy Time Tales, a podcast aimed at helping you to get a good night's sleep. Do you find your mind plagued with the stresses of modern life, especially when the lights are out and you're trying to get a restful night? Does your spinning mind keep you awake? Follow my voice down the path towards a good night's rest. Listen to me tell a story that will keep your mind from wandering to your daytime problems. The ones you can't solve right now and will be easier to solve well rested. Listen to my voice and allow yourself to drift, following the twists and turns of the story, but slowly letting go and drifting into sleep. So what exactly is Sleepy Time Tales? What is it for? What is this strange thing, this strange idea, this podcast that you're supposed to fall asleep to? But lack of sleep is a health crisis in the 21st century, and this is a podcast intended to help those that it can to get a restful night. Do you find yourself lying awake at night, mind spinning and emotions in turmoil with anxieties of the 21st century? Do you wake up in the middle of the night and find yourself not quite able to doze back off? I'm here to help. My name is Dave, and I'm your narrator, here to help you into a restful night. Sleepy Time Tales is intended to be used as a distraction to what keeps you awake at night, or sometimes background noise or simply company. As far as I know, there are a couple of different ways to engage with the show. The main idea is that it gives you something to focus on, a story or an event that lets you keep your mind on a specific point, to stop it from spinning out into stress and anxieties, to help you to focus just enough not to resist the embrace of a night's sleep when it comes for you. Or maybe you need something a bit different. Maybe you just need some kind of background noise. Some people like white noise or the sound of the ocean or the wind in the trees, or maybe just some boring dude droning on in the background. As you're listening, don't try to force the sleep. Just keep a light mental grip on the thread of the story and allow the need for sleep to come for you. Now obviously I'm hoping that you're asleep before I get to the end of the episode, but don't feel pressurized. This may very well not work on the first night. It'll probably take you a few nights to get used to listening to my voice. Maybe my accent is strange, maybe one episode isn't long enough. I recommend giving a solid 3 nights before you give up on Sleepy Time Tales or try to move on to something else. That's the usual time it takes to get used to something new like this. Or maybe your problem isn't so much going to sleep. Maybe you wake up in the middle of the night. What I recommend, because it's what works for me, is to let the podcast run all night. Download a whole bunch of episodes, put them in a playlist, and let them go. That way, if you find yourself awake at 3 a.m., you can just carry on listening and allow yourself to go straight back to sleep again. And you can even do the same thing if someone who wakes up before the alarm. 60 minutes, or even as little as 30 minutes. Carry on listening, go back to sleep again. And it may seem strange, but you may find that is the most satisfying part of your whole night. There's something about allowing yourself complete relaxation right before the alarm that's satisfying on a whole new, deep level. It's very important as you're listening to try to relax. If you're new to the show and prone to late nights lying staring at the ceiling, this may seem strange to you, so give it a chance. Because I'm here to work with you, to create a safe space, a cocoon in which you can curl up and allow nature to take its course. So if you're still with me, thank you for staying. If you're already asleep, we'll chat again soon. And of course, you aren't hearing me, except maybe in a dream. Before we get on with the show, I'd like to ask for a couple of minutes of your time. As I mentioned recently, Sleepy Time Tales has partnered up with Magic Mind, a matcha-based energy product to enhance your energy and day-to-day concentration. The folks at Magic Mind sent some for me to try out, because I'm not going to recommend a product I can't stand by, and they also obviously agree with that, and it was an interesting experience. It comes in a little bottle that can easily be swigged in a couple of sips. You can add it to milk or smoothies or water, whatever suits you. But I enjoyed the fruity, herby flavor, so I stuck with having it as a shot with my morning coffee. Even on the first day I felt the effect. I won't say it gave me a buzz, but I felt noticeably sharper and more focused. And as I've been drinking it daily as part of my morning ritual, I've definitely felt the benefits of the product. Obviously, I know that everyone listening here is an insomniac like I am, and after sometimes not great night's sleep, it still gives me an extra spring in my step for a good chunk of the next day, and helps me focus on my work. I can happily recommend Magic Mind to the sleep-deprived, or anyone who's needing help to focus. The folks over there have got a great offer to Sleepy Time Tales listeners. If you go to magicmind.co/sleepytales and enter the code SleepyTales20 at checkout, you'll get a 20% discount on all purchases. But even better, if you sign up to their subscription service, the total discount you'll receive will be up to 56%, taking Magic Mind from a good buy to a great one. The time is limited on this offer, so don't snooze on it. I think it's available till around the 4th of January, so go and grab it quickly while you can. The info is in the show notes, but a reminder that the link is magicmind.co/sleepytales and code SleepyTales20. Thanks again to Magic Mind for the support, and if you make a purchase, please let me know and tag them as well so that they know that I sent you. Further on, if you'd like to support Sleepy Time Tales, you can help me to keep it going out to thousands of insomniacs just like you by supporting it on the Patreon. This is monthly support that helps me keep the lights on and gets you fun bonuses based on your contribution level. From as little as $2 a month, you get weekly access to early release on the main episodes, so that you get your fresh sleep aid on a Wednesday instead of a Sunday. And $5 gets you weekly bonus minisodes, special edits, and a monthly megasode, which is all the month's releases in one big listen. If a monthly support is a big ask, and I can understand that, you can also make once-off tips to the tip jar on the website. Shout out to Tim, who gave a very welcome and appreciated contribution there last week. Tim is one of those people who follows my advice to listen to the show when you wake up before the alarm, and finds it's very helpful as well. Last but not least for this week, another way to help the show is simply to spread the word. If you know someone who struggles to sleep and you think will benefit from listening to Sleepy Time Tales, just tell them about it, whether in person or on social media. Thank you for taking the time. Let's get back to the show. We return this week to The Republic by Plato. That I learn of others, I replied, is quite true, but that I am ungrateful I wholly deny. Money I have none, and therefore I pay in praise, which is all I have. And how ready I am to praise anyone who appears to me to speak well, you will very soon find out when you answer. For I expect that you will answer well. Listen then, he said. I proclaim that justice is nothing else than the interest of the stronger. And now why do you not praise me? But of course you won't. Let me first understand you, I replied. Justice, as you say, is the interest of the stronger. What, Thrasymachus, is the meaning of this? You cannot mean to say that because Polydamas, the pancreatist, is stronger than we are, and finds the eating of beef conducive to his bodily strength, that to eat beef is therefore equally for our good, or weaker than he is, and right and just for us. That's abominable of you, Socrates. You take the words in the sense which is most damaging to the argument. Not at all, my good sir, I said. I am trying to understand them, and I wish that you would be a little clearer. Well, he said, have you never heard that forms of government differ? There are tyrannies and there are democracies and there are aristocracies. Yes, I know. And the government is the ruling power in each state. Certainly. And the different forms of government make laws democratical, aristocratical, tyrannical, with a view to their several interests. And these laws, which are made by them for their own interests, are the justice which they deliver to their subjects. And him who transgresses them they punish as a breaker of the law, and unjust. And that is what I mean when I say that in all states there is the same principle of justice, which is the interest of the government. And as the government must be supposed to have power, the only reasonable conclusion is that everywhere there is one principle of justice, which is the interest of the stronger. Now I understand you, I said, and whether you are right or not, I will try to discover. But let me remark that in defining justice you have yourself used the word interest, which you forbade me to use. It is true, however, that in your definition the words of the stronger are added. A small addition you must allow, he said. Great or small, never mind about that. We must first inquire whether what you are saying is the truth. Now that we are both agreed that justice is interest of some sort, but you go on to say of the stronger. About this addition I am not so sure, and must therefore consider further. Proceed. I will. And first tell me, do you admit that it is just for subjects to obey their rulers? I do. But are the rulers of states absolutely infallible, or are they sometimes liable to err? To be sure, he replied, they are liable to err. Then in making their laws they may sometimes make them rightly and sometimes not. True. When they make them rightly, they make them agreeably to their interest. When they are mistaken, contrary to their interest. You admit that? Yes. And the laws which they make must be obeyed by their subjects, and that is what you call justice. Doubtless. Then justice, according to your argument, is not only obedience to the interest of the strong, but the reverse. What is it that you are saying? He asked. I'm only repeating what you are saying, I believe. But let us consider. Have we not admitted that the rulers may be mistaken about their own interest, in what they command, and also that to obey them is justice? Has not that been admitted? Yes. Then you must also have acknowledged justice is not to be for the interest of the stronger, when the rulers unintentionally command things to be done which are to their own injury. For if, as you say, justice is the obedience which the subject renders to their commands, in that case, O wisest of men, is there any escape from the conclusion that the weaker are commanded to do, not what is for the interest, but what is for the injury of the stronger? Nothing can be clearer, Socrates, said Polemarchus. Yes, said Cleitophon, interposing, if you are allowed to be his witness. But there is no need of any witness, said Polemarchus. For Thrasymachus himself acknowledges that rulers may sometimes command what is not for their own interest, and that for subjects to obey them is justice. Yes, Polemarchus. Thrasymachus said that for subjects to do what was commanded by their rulers is just. Yes, Cleitophon. But he also said that justice is in the interest of the stronger. And while admitting both these propositions, he further acknowledged that the stronger may command the weaker, or his subjects, to do what is not for his own interest. Whence follows that justice is the injury quite as much as the interest of the stronger. By Cleitophon, he meant by the interest of the stronger what the stronger thought to be his interest. This was what the weaker had to do, and this was affirmed by him to be justice. These were not his words, rejoined Polemarchus. Never mind, I replied. If he now says that they are, let us accept his statement. Tell me, Thrasymachus. I said, did you mean by justice what the stronger thought to be his interest, whether really so or not? Certainly not, he said. Do you suppose that I call him who is mistaken the stronger at the time when he is mistaken? Yes, I said. My impression was that you did so, when you admitted that the ruler was not infallible, but might sometimes be mistaken. You argue like an informer, Socrates. Do you mean, for example, that he who is mistaken about the sick is a physician in that he is mistaken, or that he who errs in arithmetic or grammar is an arithmetician or grammarian at the time when he is making the mistake, in respect of the mistake? True, we say that the physician or arithmetician or grammarian has made a mistake, but this is only a way of speaking. For the fact is that neither the grammarian nor any other person of skill ever makes a mistake insofar as he is what his name implies. They none of them err, unless the skill fails them, and then they cease to be skilled artists. No artist or sage or ruler errs at the time when he is what his name implies, though he is commonly said to err, and I adopted the common mode of speaking. But to be perfectly accurate, since you are such a lover of accuracy, we should say that the ruler, insofar as he is a ruler, is unerring, and being unerring always commands that which is for his own interest, and the subject is required to execute his commands. And therefore, as I said at first, and now repeat, justice is the interest of the stronger. Indeed, Thrasymachus, and do I really appear to you to argue like an informer? Certainly, he replied. And do you suppose that I ask these questions with any design of injuring you in the argument? Nay, he replied, suppose is not the word. I know it, but you will be found out, and by sheer force of argument you will never prevail. I shall not make the attempt, my dear man, but to avoid any misunderstanding occurring between us in future, let me ask, in what sense do you speak of a ruler or stronger, whose interest, as you were saying, he being the superior, it is just that the inferior should execute? Is he a ruler in the popular, or in the strict sense of the term? In the strictest of all senses, he said. And now cheat and play the informer if you can. I ask no quarter at your hands, but you will never be able, ever. And do you imagine, I said, that I am such a madman as to try and cheat, Thrasymachus? I might as well shave a lion. Why, he said, you made an attempt a minute ago and you failed. Enough, I said, of these civilities. It will be better that I should ask you a question. Is the physician, taken in the strict sense of which you are speaking, a healer of the sick or a maker of money? And remember that I am now speaking of the true physician. A healer of the sick, he replied. And the pilot, that is to say the true pilot, is he a captain of sailors or a mere sailor? A captain of sailors. The circumstance that he sails in the ship is not to be taken into account. Neither is he to be called a sailor. The name pilot, by which he is distinguished, has nothing to do with sailing, but it is significant of his skill and of his authority over the sailors. Very true, he said. Now, I said, every art has an interest, certainly, for which the art has to consider and provide. Yes, that is the aim of art. And the interest of any art is the perfection of it, this and nothing else. What do you mean? I mean what I may illustrate negatively by the example of the body. Suppose you were to ask me whether the body is self-sufficing or has wants. I should reply, certainly the body has wants, for the body may be ill and require to be cured, and has therefore interests to which the art of medicine ministers. And this is the origin and intention of medicine, as you will acknowledge. Am I not right? Quite right, he replied. But is the art of medicine or any other art faulty or deficient in any quality in the same way that the eye may be deficient in sight or the ear fail of hearing, and therefore requires another art to provide for the interests of seeing and hearing? Has art in itself, I say, any similar liability to fault or defect? And does every art require another supplementary art to provide for its interests, and that another and another without end? Or have the arts to look only after their own interests? Or have they no need either of themselves or of another? Having no faults or defects, they have no need to correct them, either by the exercise of their own art or of any other. They have only to consider the interest of their subject matter, for every art remains pure and faultless while remaining true. That is to say, while perfect and unimpaired. Take the words in your precise sense, and tell me whether I am not right. Yes, clearly. Then medicine does not consider the interest of medicine, but the interest of the body. True, he said. Nor does the art of horsemanship consider the interests of the art of horsemanship, but the interests of the horse. Neither do any other arts care for themselves, for they have no needs. They care only for that which is the subject of their art. True, he said. But surely, Thrasymachus, the arts are the superiors and rulers of their subjects. To this he assented, with a good deal of reluctance. Then, I said, no science or art considers or enjoins the interest of the stronger or superior, but only the interest of the subject and weaker. He made an attempt to contest this proposition also, but finally acquiesced. Then, I continued, no physician, in so far as he is a physician, considers his own good in what he prescribes, but the good of his patient. The true physician is also a ruler, having the human body as a subject, and is not a mere money-maker. That has been admitted. Yes. And the pilot likewise, in the strict sense of the term, is a ruler of sailors, and not a mere sailor. That has been admitted. And such a pilot and ruler will provide and prescribe for the interest of the sailor who is under him, and not for his own or the ruler's interest. He gave a reluctant yes. Then, I said, Thrasymachus, there is no one in any rule who, insofar as he is a ruler, considers or enjoins what is for his own interest, but always what is for the interest of his subject, or suitable to his art. To that he looks, and that alone he considers in everything which he says and does. When we had got to this point in the argument, and everyone saw that the definition of justice had been completely upset, Thrasymachus, instead of replying to me, he said, "Tell me, Socrates, have you got a nurse?" "Why do you ask such a question?" I said, "when you ought rather to be answering." "Because she leaves you to snivel and never wipes your nose. She has not even taught you to know the shepherd from the sheep." "What makes you say that?" I replied. "Because you fancy that the shepherd or neatherd fattens or tends the sheep or oxen with a view to their own good, and not to the good of himself or his master. And you further imagine that the rulers of states, if they are true rulers, never think of their subjects as sheep, and that they are not studying their own advantage day and night. Oh no, and so entirely astray are you in your ideas about the just and unjust, as not even to know that justice and the just are in reality another's good. That is to say, the interest of the ruler and stronger, and the loss of the subject and servant, and injustice is the opposite, for the unjust is lord over the truly simple and just. He is the stronger, and his subjects do what is for his interests and minister to his happiness, but is very far from being their own. Consider further, most foolish Socrates, that the just is always a loser in comparison with the unjust. First of all, in private contracts, wherever the unjust is the partner of the just, you will find that, when the partnership is dissolved, the unjust man has always more and the just less. Secondly, in their dealings with the state, when there is an income tax, the just man will pay more, and the unjust less on the same amount of income. And when there is anything to be received, the one gains nothing and the other much. Observe also what happens when they take an office. There is the just man, neglecting his affairs and perhaps suffering other losses, getting nothing out of the public, because he is just. Moreover, he is hated by his friends and acquaintance for refusing to serve them in unlawful ways. But all this is reversed in the case of the unjust man. I am speaking, as before, of injustice on a large scale, in which the advantage of the unjust is most apparent. And my meaning will most clearly be seen if we turn to the highest form of injustice, in which the criminal is the happiest of men, and the sufferers, or those who refuse to do injustice, are the most miserable. That's to say, tyranny, which by fraud and force takes away the property of others. Not little by little, but wholesale, comprehending in one, things sacred as well as profane, private and public, for which acts of wrong, if he were detected perpetrating any one of them singly, he would be punished and incur great disgrace. They who do such wrong in particular cases are called robbers of temples, and man-stealers and burglars and swindlers and thieves. But when a man, besides taking away the money of the citizens, has made slaves of them, and then, instead of these names of reproach, is termed happy and blessed, not only by the citizens, but by all who hear of his having achieved the consummation of injustice. For mankind censure injustice, fearing that they may be the victims of it, and not because they shrink from committing it. And thus, as I have shown, Socrates, injustice, when on a sufficient scale, has more strength and freedom and mastery than justice. And as I said at first, justice is the interest of the stronger, whereas injustice is a man's own profit and interest. Thrasymachus, when he had thus spoken, having, like a bathman, deluged our ears with his words, had a mind to go away. But the company would not let him. They insisted that he should remain and defend his position, and I myself added my own humble request that he would not leave us. Thrasymachus, I said to him, excellent man, how suggestive are your remarks. Are you going to run away before you have fairly taught or learned whether they are true or not? Is the attempt to determine the way of man's life so small a matter in your eyes? To determine how life may be passed by each of us to the greatest advantage? And do I differ from you, he said, as to the importance of the inquiry? You appear rather, I replied, to have no care or thought about us, Thrasymachus. Whether we live better or worse from not knowing what you say you know, is to you a matter of indifference. Prithee, friend, do not keep your knowledge to yourself. We are a large party, and any benefit which you confer upon us will be amply rewarded. For my own part, I openly declare that I am not convinced, and that I do not believe injustice to be more gainful than justice, even if uncontrolled and allowed to have free play. For granting that there may be an unjust man who is able to commit injustice, either by fraud or force, still this does not convince me of the superior advantage of injustice, and there may be others who are in the same predicament with myself. Perhaps we may be wrong. If so, you in your wisdom should convince us that we are mistaken in preferring justice to injustice. How am I to convince you, he said, if you are not already convinced by what I have just said? What more can I do for you? What would you have me put the proof bodily into your souls? Heaven forbid, I said. I would only ask you to be consistent. Or if you change openly and let there be no deception. For I must remark, Thrasymachus, that if you will recall what was previously said, that although you began by defining the true physician in an exact sense, you did not observe a like exactness when speaking of the shepherd. You thought that the shepherd, as a shepherd, tends the sheep, not with a view to their own good, but like a mere diner or banqueter with a view to the pleasure of the table. Or again, as a trader for sale in the market, and not as a shepherd. Yet surely the art of the shepherd is concerned only with the good of his subjects. He has only to provide the best for them, since the perfection of the art is already ensured whenever all the requirements of it are satisfied. And that was what I was saying now just about the ruler. I conceived that the art of the ruler, considered as ruler, whether in a state or in private life, could only regard the good of his flock or subjects, whereas you seem to think that the rulers in states, that is to say the true rulers, like being an authority. Think? Nay, I am sure of it. Then why in the case of lesser officers do men never take them willingly, without payment, unless under the idea that they govern for the advantage not of themselves but of others? Let me ask you a question. Are not the several arts different, by reason of their each having a separate function? And my dear illustrious friend, to say what you think, that we may make a little progress. Yes, that is the difference, he replied. And each art gives us a particular good, and not merely a general one. Medicine, for example, gives us health, navigation, safety at sea, and so on. Yes, he said. And the art of payment has the special function of giving pay. But we do not confuse this with the other arts, any more than the art of the pilot is to be confused with the art of medicine. Because the health of the pilot may be improved by a sea voyage. You would not be inclined to say, would you, that navigation is the art of medicine? At least we are to adopt your exact use of language. Certainly not. Well, because a man is in good health, when he receives pay, you would not say that the art of payment is medicine. I should not. Nor would you say that medicine is the art of receiving pay, because a man takes fees when he is engaged in healing. Certainly not. And we have admitted, I said, that the good of each art is specially confined to the art. Yes. Then if there's to be any good which all artists have in common, that is to be attributed to something of which they all have common use. True, he replied. And when the artist is benefited by receiving pay, the advantage is gained by an additional use of the art of pay, which is not the art professed by him. He gave a reluctant assent to this. Then pay is not derived by the several artists from their respective arts. But the truth is that while the art of medicine gives health, and the art of the builder builds a house, another art attends them, which is the art of pay. The various arts may be doing their own business and benefiting that over which they preside. But would the artist receive any benefit from his art, unless he were paid as well? I suppose not. But does he therefore confer no benefit when he works for nothing? Certainly he confers a benefit. Then now, Thrasymachus, there is no longer any doubt that neither arts nor governments provide for their own interest. But, as we were before saying, they rule and provide for the interests of their subjects, who are the weaker and not the stronger. To their good they attend, and not to the good of the superior. And this is the reason, my dear Thrasymachus, why, as I was saying just now, no one is willing to govern, because no one likes to take in hand the reformation of evils, which are not his concern without remuneration. For in the execution of his work and in giving his orders to another, the true artist does not regard his own interest, but always that of his subjects, and therefore in order that rulers may be willing to rule, they must be paid in one of three modes of payment: money, or honor, or penalty for refusing. What do you mean, Socrates? Said Glaucon. The first two modes of payment are intelligible enough, but what the penalty is I do not understand, or how a penalty can be a payment. You mean that you do not understand the nature of this payment, which to the best men is the great inducement to rule. Of course you know that ambition and avarice are held to be, as indeed they are, a disgrace. Very true. And for this reason, I said, money and honor have no attraction for them. Good men do not wish to be openly demanding payment for governing, and so to get the name of hirelings, nor by secretly helping themselves out of the public revenues to get the name of thieves. And not being ambitious, they do not care about honor. Wherefore necessity must be laid upon them, and they must be induced to serve from the fear of punishment. And this, as I imagine, is the reason why the forwardness to take office, instead of waiting to be compelled, has been deemed dishonorable. Now the worst part of the punishment is that he who refuses to rule is liable to be ruled by one who is worse than himself. And the fear of this, as I conceive, induces the good to take office. Not because they would, but because they cannot help. Not under the idea that they are going to have any benefit or enjoyment themselves, but as a necessity. And because they are not able to commit the task of ruling to anyone who is better than themselves, or indeed as good. For there is reason to think that if a city were composed entirely of good men, then to avoid office would be as much an object of contention as to obtain office is at present. Then we should have plain proof that the true ruler is not meant by nature to regard his own interest, but that of his subjects, and everyone who knew this would choose rather to receive a benefit from another than to have the trouble of conferring one. So far am I from agreeing with Thrasymachus that justice is the interest of the stronger. The latter question need not be further discussed at present. But when Thrasymachus says that the life of the unjust is more advantageous than that of the just, his new statement appears to me to be of a far more serious character. Which of us has spoken truly, and which sort of life, Glaucon, do you prefer? And I'm going to leave it on that question for tonight. As always, if you want to pick up where we've left off, you can find the original on Project Gutenberg at the link in the show notes. Thanks again for joining me on this episode of Sleepy Time Tales, the podcast designed around a bedtime story to help you to get a restful night. New episodes will be released every Sunday night to give you something fresh to help you rest in a new week. But make sure to follow or subscribe in whatever service you use so you get your new episodes whenever they come out. Good night and sweet dreams.